What an amazing moment for Terence Bud Crawford. One of the best single fight performances, I think, in boxing history. Clearly defining himself as the finest of this era. Clearly defining himself as the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. And I think it's really what blinded a lot of people in this fight. It's what blinded me in predicting this fight. We're so used to seeing Canelo as the biggest fighter of this era. We're so used to putting Canelo on top of the mountain. We're so used to seeing him as the A side that we forget about pure boxing terms. As when you bring the boxing down to as pure of terms as possible, pound for pound, well, let's be real. Yes, Terence Crawford was the better fighter this entire time. And my calculation, which ended up being a miscalculation in predicting Canelo, was based on the fact that I believed Canelo would be faster. I also believed that Canelo's body work would be able to tire out Terence Crawford, which ultimately wasn't the case. We'll get there. And as the fight went on, it became increasingly apparent that Terence Crawford was faster than Canelo. I'll watch the fight back again, of course, but I think it's probably likely that Terence Crawford was faster than Canelo for the entire fight. I'm certain that Terence Crawford out-jabbed Canelo. I said in my pre-fight ramble that I released earlier today that Crawford needs to punch to the body and that every shot to the head would basically just be a waste of time for Crawford if he wants to knock out Canelo, or if he wants to even beat Canelo. He needs to just go to the body and tire Canelo out to make Canelo no longer the faster fighter. Well, if Canelo isn't the faster fighter, that's no longer an issue. And Terence Crawford, he didn't lead with the body shots. He led with the jab. Terence Crawford he's not a guy that I think of necessarily a jabber, but he was out there jabbing like Richardson Hitchens or Tommy Hearns. He was just straightforward with jab, 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 jab. And Canelo didn't really jab back. Canelo's go-to punch in this fight was just a sort of jump in uppercut to the body. And ultimately, when you actually saw the two in there against one another, it was very clear that Canelo had so many things going against him here. Not only is Crawford a southpaw, not only is Crawford faster, not only does Crawford have a reach advantage, but yeah, Crawford does look bigger. And at the end of the day, even through all those body shots, partially due to all of the jabs going to the body, going to the head, going everywhere on Canelo, and just how much he was getting outlanded by. And of course, Crawford's ability to use the ring. I mean, I'm just going on and on here, aren't I? It's just advantage after advantage. And Canelo was only really able to find solace inside, just getting as far inside as he could, except Crawford would always roll out. And in those big uppercuts to the body that didn't really do enough damage to Crawford to really slow him down. And Crawford did a fantastic job of managing the fight in the second half of the fight, or in my prediction, I said that Terence Crawford was going to be tired and that was going to be Canelo's opportunity. Well, Canelo did his best work of the fight in the second half, but it was only out of desperation and necessity to try to get the fight back even, drag Terence Crawford into something that could, end in a big shot by Canelo. But Crawford was very smart. Crawford definitely felt Canelo's power. You could tell he was afraid of getting hit by a big shot, but it's part of why he got on his bike. And also, his defense was incredible. And make no mistake when I say got on his bike, this was not Terence Crawford running. I saw some people saying Terence Crawford was going to run in this fight. He ran a little bit, but he only ran out of necessity to keep from trading in the pocket with an extremely powerful puncher in Canelo. And I think to a certain extent, Canelo landed the harder punches in this fight. It's like a lot of fights. It's especially like a lot of fights for fighters like Canelo who are, coming later into their career. I think Canelo very clearly has a lot more ring miles on him than Terence Crawford. You could definitely see that in this fight. And it's true for older fighters who have a lot of ring wear. You definitely saw this late in Mike Tyson's career. The tendency to just throw single punches over comboing. And to the layman, a very basic summary of this fight is that, Canelo leaned a lot more towards throwing single punches, straights up the middle, overhand rights, the uppercuts to the body I've mentioned, and Crawford was jabbing and comboing off the jab. And the simpler way to say that is that Terence Crawford outboxed Canelo, and Terence Crawford did outbox Canelo. He outboxed Canelo for the much better part of 12 rounds. And I think I had the fight a little closer in some ways than a lot of people did. I was surprised to see on the TV broadcast after the first two rounds that the judge on the broadcast had Crawford up 2-0 when I had Canelo up 2-0. Now, those were two feeling out rounds, but it was more the two fighters just doing their thing, with Canelo going to the body and Crawford jabbing and going to the head. And ultimately, like I said before, Crawford did a great job substituting the body work with the jab. and ultimately just frustrating Canelo. And you saw that. We never see that out of Canelo. I think maybe you saw it against Mayweather, but that was 15 years ago. Those looks of frustration where he would just do a little look away, do a little turn away, just like just motions of very clear, visible frustration that you don't really see from Canelo Alvarez. And he did an unbelievable job staying composed and an unbelievable job taking huge shots from Terence Crawford. Most fighters, I think even most super middleweights, would have got knocked out by Crawford's work in this fight. Terence Crawford was landing some hellacious little uppercuts. I was very worried about those Terence Crawford uppercuts, those ones that he can sneak in on you, getting in on Canelo and hurting him. And Crawford almost dropped Canelo at the end of this fight, at the end of round 12 when they were trading. And ultimately, it is a shame that we didn't really get a ton of the two of them really sort of swinging at the same time. There were a lot of really high-level exchanges, and the truth is, the sad truth for Canelo and the fans of Mexican boxing and the Mexican style of boxing, and such an exchange-based style of boxing, is Crawford won most of the exchanges. The story of this fight was Canelo largely being frustrated in losing those exchanges. Every one of those basic punches that Canelo threw, the straight, the uppercut, the overhand, Crawford very quickly learned how to counter all of them. It was absolutely no problem. And you could tell that Canelo was really in trouble by the fact that, through the middle rounds of the fight, when Crawford would roll out to the right or roll out to the left, use the ring and move, one of Canelo's actual best options to ever hit Crawford was just to sort of try to hit him with a body shot as he was moving out. And it's not really a great punch. You'd rather not be hitting a moving target. You'd rather not be throwing a body shot at a moving target if you're going to hit Terence Crawford. And there were combinations in this fight that Canelo threw that didn't do anything to Crawford at all. I mean, that just bounced right off him. And of course, the same thing is true the other way. Canelo can take a punch better than anybody. Canelo actually, I think, can take a punch better than Crawford, and he lost the fight. But Canelo did a really good job slipping punches. I think he still has a lot of his defensive skills. I noticed that in the first round, he was holding his lead hand up a lot higher to try to counter that southpaw style, kind of trying to bat the punches away, kind of Mayweather style. And I think he realized, or rather, he either just couldn't keep his hand up that high for that long, it just got too much, or Crawford's hands were just too fast to do that. He can't really bat the punches away and slap the punches away when Crawford is as fast and tenacious as he is. And really, the skill set, the skill gap, there's a skill gap. Dude, Canelo Alvarez is not used to fighting a guy he has a skill gap too. Right? That's why there were all those body shots. That's why he went to his number one main punch, that big uppercut body shot to the liver. He just kept going back to it over and over again because the truth is he didn't have any better ideas. But he still has those abilities to make those little micro movements and make those big shots that would have knocked out a lot of fighters, leaning his head back and away to get away from the uppercuts. Just little twitches of the head to make those big hooks not land. He avoided a lot of really, really big left hooks from Crawford, and Crawford hit him with some huge shots, make no mistake at all. Crawford messed up Canelo. Canelo's face was beat red after the fight. He looked like he got beat up. That was unquestionably the worst fight of Canelo's career. Well, I don't know. You can heads and tails it with Mayweather, but that's such a different Canelo. He unquestionably just got beat up worse by Crawford than he did by Bivol. The Bivol fight was much, much closer than that, and I can't believe that I'm saying that. That was a historic performance by Terence Crawford. It's going to be really hard to convince people after that Terence Crawford wasn't the best fighter of this era, and I think it's really great for the whole sport of boxing too. Because Terence Crawford has been an undisputed champion. He's held a bunch of belts in a bunch of different weight classes. He started at 135. I mean, this is historic for that reason just to start with. He's the first ever 3-division undisputed champion in boxing history. Imagine telling somebody that 10 years ago at the state the sport was in then, that you would have a 3-division undisputed champion. But Terence Crawford has had a career that's been so snake-bitten by promotional issues and a lack of exposure that it's just great for the sport of boxing and great for all the fans who want to look back and maybe give some more love to those fights, to those past Terence Crawford fights, to look at his past opponents and his past victories with a little with a little more reverence than they've been held in before. Even though those fights were on Top Rank, you got to go back and look at those performances now that we've seen him do what he just did to Canelo. Because Terence Crawford very much deserves his flowers, and I expect Canelo, honestly, to go right back to winning ways. I think people are going to make a little bit too much out of Canelo being washed up. Canelo was still pretty quick. He was still pretty defensively acute there. I think that Canelo did most of what he could, but Crawford outboxed him and was able to determine where the fight was taking place with his movement. That's something that I touched on in my preview video, that I believe Crawford to have the better footwork. But that doesn't just apply to that kind of stalking forward, moving footwork that you know Crawford for. That also applies to moving around the ring and using the ring and controlling the ring. And you could definitely see in this fight how, yes, Canelo mastered a lot of parts of the American style of boxing after he lost to Floyd Mayweather, but it still doesn't measure up to the best American-style boxer in the world. And honestly, after watching that, he's got a good argument for the best American-style boxer of all time. They said it on the post-fight show. I think it was Antonio Tarver. That was a better win for Terence Crawford than any win that Floyd Mayweather had in his entire career. And that's why I can't even come up with another win in the history of the sport that actually reminds me of it. Pacquiao wasn't as old as Crawford is now when he beat De La Hoya. He was a lot younger, so it doesn't match up with that. I guess it's like Roberto Duran beating Sugar Ray Leonard, but this is much less of an upset. So to me, given the whole switch hitting thing, it does kind of remind me of if Marvin Hagler had actually beaten Sugar Ray Leonard in that fight, like I said. So this is just a great moment for American boxing. It's a great moment for Terence Crawford. It's a bit of a sad chapter for Canelo, who still has more chapters to write after this. I will be right here to still defend Canelo in a lot of ways because I still think he is a fantastic fighter. I still think he has a really good chance against Benavidez. I still think he even has a good chance against Hamza Shiraz, as big and powerful as Hamza Shiraz is. Canelo is unquestionably a historic fighter and a very tough fighter, and I think that he knew that Crawford was going to be a challenge. He was presented with that challenge, and through all 36 minutes that he tried to solve that challenge, he just didn't figure it out. And I gave Canelo the last round because he did manage to move forward and control the pace and actually start to win some exchanges with Crawford, which hadn't happened in a few rounds at that point in the 12th round. And I think that speaks to just how impressive Canelo is, to have been the more tired fighter for so many rounds, to have been the slower fighter for so many rounds, and still to go out and outbox Crawford, albeit a careful Crawford there in the 12th round. And I know that Crawford, like I said, almost dropped Canelo there at the end of the 12th round, but I still gave Canelo that 12th round. And on that note, I'll read you guys my scorecard for how I scored this fight. Now, rounds 1 and 2 I gave to Canelo. Like I said before, it was jabs and head work from Crawford that it's not. Maybe I gave Canelo these rounds. Canelo did really good body work in response. And maybe I gave Canelo these rounds because that just wasn't what I wanted to see from Crawford. Going into the fight, I wanted to see Crawford go to the body. Now, ultimately, that didn't happen. He led behind the jab. But while I was watching those rounds, I gave those rounds to Canelo. In hindsight, thinking about how much Crawford did jab in the fight, maybe when I go back, I'll give those 2 rounds to Crawford or one of those 2 rounds to Crawford. But sitting there, I had Canelo up 2-0 after 2, and I was surprised to see that the judge on Netflix had it 2-0 the other way. Now, round 3 was Crawford. It was kind of a slow round, but Crawford landed some really good headshots. I gave round 4 to Canelo because in round 4, Canelo landed what up until then were the best shots of the fight, but Crawford looked incredible at the start of that round. Round 5 was a slow round, but Crawford was still the only one jabbing in the fight. It was a slow round, but I gave it to Crawford. Round 6 was a huge round for Crawford, where he really started dominating with the jab and comboing offset jab. And after this, I gave rounds 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 all to Crawford. My final scorecard was 8-4 for Crawford. The only rounds that Canelo won being rounds 1, 2, 4, and 12. Every single round from round 5 to 11 I gave to Crawford. And there could be even a possibility where I go back, watch it, and give one of the first 2 rounds to Crawford, and this fight is 9-3 or maybe even 10-2 if I find myself to be wrong about those first 2 rounds. Because the first 2 rounds, man, I was just still kind of in awe that I was even watching this fight. And this was also a really good fight. It was a really great boxing match. It was really high level, and it was really entertaining. I was watching this fight with a few of my friends who don't watch boxing that regularly, and they were thoroughly entertained with this fight and thoroughly impressed with Terence Crawford. And I think that this fight was free. It's just tremendous for Terence Crawford as a star. It's tremendous for American boxing in that way, that a lot of people who had never heard of Terence Crawford, and let's be honest, probably should have, they've definitely heard of Terence Crawford after tonight. And the fact that he managed to win so many people over, not just with his fighting in the ring, but his conduct, his interviews after the fight, the way that he's acted in accordance to this fight, how grateful he was for winning. He really covered himself in glory, and that was a really, really great night for Terence Crawford. So hats off to Bud Crawford. He's going to have a really, really great case to be one of the best American fighters of all time. He could retire tonight, and people would still be talking about him for 100 years, but let's see if he still has more to prove. I'm down for as many Bud Crawford fights as you possibly want, because, a big part of why he managed to win this fight is that he doesn't quite have the ring miles that Canelo does. He doesn't quite fight with the frequency that Canelo does. So let's see what's next for him, man. It's going to be something exciting, and I'm sure I'll be right here to make videos about it. And I've certainly learned my lesson to pick against Bud, even at super middleweight, even at a higher weight. That was special. And especially I haven't even talked about this, to be able to keep his stamina up through all 12 rounds, to wear those body shots. It really only started to show at the end of the fight. Tremendous stamina. You can tell it's an athlete who's been training at altitude pretty much his entire career. Not that Canelo hasn't, but man, Crawford's motor is something else. To be able to outmove Canelo like that, that's something I really, really didn't expect. So like and subscribe. I'll be back with more fights after this, hopefully on this fight, and I'm definitely going to make a video about Inoue versus Akhmadaliev. That fight's at 6:30 a.m. my time, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay up tonight to watch it, but you know what, it's 2:30 right now, and you can hear me. I've still got plenty of energy after watching that one. So like and subscribe. I'm going to keep rolling with the combat sports and boxing content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.